A few months ago, my boyfriend and I went for a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods. I thought it would be a good way to unwind from my stressful job as a project manager. I wanted us to disconnect from everything and reconnect with each other. The peaceful forest seemed perfect. When we arrived, the cabin looked charming. It had a rustic feel, nestled between tall pine trees. The air was fresh, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. But that calm didn't last. Later that night, we sat by the fire, enjoying the warmth. I noticed strange symbols carved into the wooden walls. They seemed odd, but I brushed it off. My boyfriend was intrigued. He leaned in closer, studying the patterns. I started to feel uneasy. Something felt off. Around midnight, I heard something outside. It sounded like laughter, maybe from a child. I frowned, trying to shake it off. Was I just imagining it? When I mentioned it to my boyfriend, he laughed. "You're just hearing things," he said. I wanted to believe him, but my heart raced. The next day, we decided to explore the woods. It was quiet, too quiet. I swore I heard whispers drifting through the trees. I felt like eyes were watching me from behind the trunks. My boyfriend seemed absorbed in discovery while I just wanted to go back to the cabin. It felt safer inside those wooden walls. When we returned, I spotted something strange. A mug sat on the table, one we had not brought out. I stared at it. "Did you put that there?" I asked. He hadn't. My stomach dropped. The feeling of someone else being there gnawed at me. I tried to hide my growing anxiety, but it wouldn't let go. That night, as we tried to sleep, I heard the whispers again. It felt like they were right outside the window. My heart raced as I nudged my boyfriend awake. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He just grunted and turned away. I felt so alone. Maybe I was overreacting. But then, I heard something scratch against the cabin door. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I strained to listen. The scratching stopped. I lay still in the dark, my mind racing. Was it just my imagination? What was out there? I wished I could just sleep, but a heavy dread settled over me. The following morning, I was eager to leave. The cabin seemed to trap all those unsettling feelings inside. As we drove away, I glanced back. I half expected to see someone at the window, waving goodbye, but nothing was there. Yet, as we drove further away, I could still hear those whispers in my mind. They clung to me, a chilling reminder that something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin held secrets. What happened that weekend still puzzles me. I wonder if I'll ever truly know. Chapter 2. I tried to put the cabin behind me after we returned home. I filled my days with work and distractions, but the unease lingered. Those whispers echoed in my mind like a haunting melody that wouldn't fade. A few weeks later, I decided to reach out to my boyfriend about the trip. After all, I wanted to clear the air. "Hey, do you remember that getaway?" I asked, hoping he'd brush it off like I wanted to. Instead, he hesitated. "Yeah, why?" "I still think about those whispers." It felt strange, didn't it? I watched as his face tightened. "Strange?" "It was just a cabin," he said, but I sensed his uncertainty. That evening, I noticed something unusual. A package had arrived on our doorstep. It was small, wrapped in brown paper. I hadn't ordered anything. Confused, I unwrapped it. Inside was a small, odd figurine, something that resembled a child, but its features were twisted and unsettling. It made my skin crawl. That I called my boyfriend over. "Look at this. Do you think someone sent it to us?" He examined it skeptically. "Maybe it's a prank?" But my instincts told me otherwise. It felt like a warning. My curiosity gnawed at me. I grabbed my phone and started researching the symbols I had seen in the cabin. My heart raced as I looked through images online. There were connections to ancient rituals and dark folklore. I couldn't help but think, could that cabin be significant in some way? Then, a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if the mug we found was a part of something larger? I scanned through forums about urban legends and local lore. As I read, a name kept coming up: the Whispers of Hollowwood. It struck me. The forest was called Hollowwood that I felt a rising dread. I wanted to dismiss it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled into something we didn't understand. My boyfriend re-entered the room, holding the figurine. "What are you thinking?" he asked, sensing my unease. "I think we need to know more about that cabin." "We should go back," I blurted out before I could stop myself. He stared at me. "Why? You want to scare yourself again?" "Maybe there's something we missed," I said, desperate to find answers. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, but if anything feels off, we leave." That night, I had trouble sleeping. I tossed and turned, staring into the darkness. The thought of going back filled me with both dread and anticipation. Then, I heard the soft whispers. They floated through my mind, closer than before. Just as I was about to sit up, my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, expecting a message, but instead, there was a notification. A video had appeared out of nowhere, titled "Hollowwood Secrets." A chill ran down my spine as I clicked on it. My breath caught. There, in the video, was a view of the cabin, just as we had seen it. But this time, it had a flickering shadow behind one of the windows. I squinted, my heart racing. Was someone there? I paused it. I had to know, what were those whispers? And who was watching? The questions weighed heavily as I stared at the screen, realizing this was only the beginning. Chapter 3. The next day, I barely ate breakfast. The shadows under my eyes mirrored my unease. I needed to ignore the whispers and the video's haunting imagery, but I couldn't. It felt like they were calling out to me. "Are you ready?" my boyfriend asked, trying to sound cheerful. His voice had a hint of apprehension. I nodded, but my stomach churned. The drive to the cabin seemed longer this time, each mile punctuated by silence. When we arrived, the air felt different. There was a thick, unshakable tension in the atmosphere. We parked, and as we stepped out of the car, the familiar scent of pine mixed with damp earth surrounded us. But I noticed something strange. The cabin's windows were open, swinging slightly in the breeze, as if someone had just left. "Did we leave those open?" I asked, glancing at my boyfriend. He shook his head. "I'm certain we closed them." A wave of apprehension washed over me. We walked toward the cabin cautiously. I expected to hear the whispers again, but the air was unnervingly still. Inside, the cabin looked untouched. Dust clung to the surfaces, and the scent of old wood filled the space. I immediately walked to the window, peering outside. "Let us look around," I suggested, eager to find any clues about the whispers. We split up, and I headed toward the small storage room in the back. As I searched, I found an old box covered in cobwebs. Inside were scrap pieces of paper, all meticulously folded. I opened one, and my heart raced. They were notes, fragments of a ritual. They detailed offerings, names, and something that chilled me to the bone: the Keeper of Whispers. "Hey! You need to see this!" I called out, my voice slightly shaky. My boyfriend came rushing in. He looked at the notes, confusion etched on his face. "What is this?" "I don't know, but I think it's connected to those whispers," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Just then, the wind picked up outside. The cabin creaked ominously, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Before I could say anything more, I noticed movement outside the window. I rushed to look, and my breath hitched. A figure stood in the trees, partially hidden, staring directly at us. The harsh sunlight made it hard to see, but I could feel their gaze. "Do you see that?" I whispered, pointing. My boyfriend squinted but didn't reply. The figure didn't move, just stood there in silence. I felt an overwhelming urge to know who it was, but fear held me back. "Well, they're not just leaves," he joked nervously, trying to lighten the mood. But I sensed he felt the weight of the moment too. Then, everything changed. The whispers returned, louder than ever, swirling around us like a storm. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound penetrated deeper. I could almost make out words, a language I didn't understand. "We need to go," my boyfriend said, panic rising in his voice. I nodded, heart pounding. Just as we turned to leave, I heard a crash from the back of the cabin. It sounded like something had fallen. I looked back, and the figure was gone. "Did you hear that?" I asked, fear creeping in. My boyfriend's face was pale. "Yeah, let us get out of here." We hurried to the front door, adrenaline spiking as we felt the urgency. Outside, we felt safer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The air was thick with tension, and I was sure we weren't alone. Then I saw a small note pinned to the door, as if someone had been waiting for us. I grabbed it, and my hands trembled as I read the words, "You've been chosen." I looked at my boyfriend, and we both knew something was terribly wrong. Before I could speak, the whispers returned, echoing around us, and I knew this was just the beginning. Chapter 4, the whispers intensified, swirling like a dark cloud around us. I felt their weight pressing against my chest. I tried to shake it off, but dread took root deep inside. "Let us get in the car," my boyfriend urged, his voice shaky. I nodded, unable to form words. We hurried back to the vehicle, the forest closing in on us like a predator waiting to strike. As we reached the car, I saw the note still crumpled in my fist. "What does it mean?" I croaked. My boyfriend grabbed my shoulder, his grip tight and reassuring. "I don't know," he admitted, his eyes wild. "But I don't want to stick around to find out." We climbed into the car, and my boyfriend immediately started the engine. The sound of the engine was comforting, a reminder of safety. "Let us just get out of here," he said, glancing nervously into the trees. I could see he was just as frightened as I was that he pulled away from the cabin, and I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking we were finally escaping the nightmare. But the moment we turned down the narrow road, the distance felt like a prison. The trees seemed to shift, leaning in closer, shadows flickering in the rearview mirror, then, out of nowhere, a loud bang echoed behind us. My heart lurched, and we both turned to look. I could see something in the road, a figure darting back into the woods. "What was that?" I gasped. "It's just our minds playing tricks," he said, but I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. "Let us just keep going." He pressed the gas pedal, and we sped away. But right when we thought we were clear, the car sputtered. I felt the jolt as it reluctantly came to a stop. My stomach dropped. "What just happened?" I asked, trying to keep the panic at bay. "Just a hiccup," he said, but his tone was unconvincing. He tried restarting the engine, but it only groaned in response. We were stranded. "Stay calm," I whispered, collecting myself. I couldn't let this unravel me. I looked around, scanning the trees, half expecting to see the figure again. "Maybe we just need to wait it out," he suggested, his voice trembling. "It'll start again soon." Just then, the whispers picked up again, rippling through the air like cold fingers running down my spine. They seemed louder, almost closer. Then something caught my eye, a flicker of movement at the edge of the woods. I squinted, and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was back, clearer this time, stepping out into the sunlight. It was a woman dressed in what looked like an old shawl, her hair wild and tangled around her face. "What does she want?" I croaked, panic bubbling to the surface. "I don't know," my boyfriend whispered back. His eyes were wide with fear, glued to the figure. The woman raised her hand slowly, as if beckoning us to come closer. The whispers grew louder, almost integrating with my thoughts. "Please, no," I whispered. "We need to leave." But as I reached for the door handle, I heard the haunting phrase that sent a chill through my entire being: "You've been chosen." Suddenly, everything around us went dark. The trees faded, the cabin vanished, and it felt like the world had collapsed. I blinked, trying to comprehend the sudden change. The quiet, almost welcoming dark was filled with murmurs in that same unknown language. I was no longer in the car. And I realized with horror, we hadn't just been chosen. We'd been summoned. "What is happening?" I screamed. But there was no answer. Only the whispers grew, swirling faster, a storm brewing around me, pulling me into the unknown. I grasped my boyfriend's hand, fear coursing through us both, and I knew we had to fight against whatever awaited us next. Chapter 5. The whispers enveloped us, a cacophony of voices merging into a single, urgent tone. I strained to hear, trying to decipher what they were saying. My boyfriend's grip on my hand tightened, and I felt a surge of panic wash over me. Something was different now. The darkness wasn't just a void, it felt like it was alive. "What do they want?" he whispered, his voice trembling as much as my own. "I don't know," I said, feeling small and helpless. My heart raced, and I fought against the urge to scream again. There was no escape, at least not yet. Then, the darkness began to lift, revealing a shadowy figure standing barely a few feet away. I recognized the old woman from the woods, but she seemed changed. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, cutting through the gloom like twin stars. "What do you want from us?" I asked, my voice shaky but defiant. She took a step closer, the whispers quieting as if we were in the eye of a storm. "You are here to fulfill a purpose," she spoke slowly, her voice both raspy and melodic. "What kind of purpose?" My mouth was dry. Her lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't reassuring. "To awaken what has long been asleep." Awaken? I didn't understand. My mind raced through all the possibilities, and dread gripped me tighter. "We didn't choose this," I protested, looking at my boyfriend, who was just as lost as I was. Her gaze locked onto mine, and I felt an involuntary shiver run through me. "It is not your choice to make." The whispers surged back, drowning out any flaring hope I had. Suddenly, I noticed we were standing on what looked like a stone altar, covered in strange symbols that flickered with a faint blue light. Panic surged in me again. "What is this place?" But before I could register her answer, the ground trembled. I stumbled slightly as the whispers transformed into a deafening roar, mixing in a chaotic symphony of fear and anticipation. The stone beneath our feet seemed to pulse, and the runes glowed brighter. "We must go," my boyfriend shouted, pulling me back. "We can't stay here." Without thinking, we turned to run, but the darkness shifted again, swallowing the altar as if it was never there. We were thrust into another space, a cavernous void filled with faintly glowing mists. Then I saw it, a monstrous shadow skimming just beneath the fog, a pair of red eyes gleaming with malevolence. Chills ran down my spine. "What is that?" I gasped, stumbling backward. I don't know," he yelled, panic spilling into every syllable. "We have to find a way out." The ground jerked again, and I barely managed to keep my footing. The whispers roared back, merging into one voice that echoed through my mind: "You are part of the awakening." Suddenly, the mist retreated, revealing a jagged opening. There was a small path ahead, edged in soft light. "We have to go this way," I urged, dragging my boyfriend after me, but as we stepped onto the path, a sudden realization hit me. What if this is what they want? To lead us deeper? He hesitated, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "We can't stay here. Whatever that is, it's closer." I could feel them watching us, waiting for us to make our next move. "Then let us hope it leads us back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As we stepped further into the light, I felt a new presence lurking behind us. I turned to look. But the darkness surged again, and I knew we needed to run. That's when I saw it, a shadowed silhouette towering over the mist, poised to follow us. "We're not alone," I breathed, realizing with a chill that our ordeal was far from over. Chapter 6. Running down the path felt surreal. The light around us flickered, creating a strobe effect. I glanced back, and my heart sank. The shadow was there, close enough that I could feel its looming presence. "Faster," I urged, pulling on my boyfriend's arm. My breath came in frantic gasps, and every step seemed to echo a primal fear that begged me to escape. The whispers intensified, crashing against my mind. "You cannot run from your destiny," they chanted repetitively. The phrase wrapped around my thoughts, tightening like a noose. My destiny? What did that even mean? We dashed deeper down the illuminated path, the mist swirling around us like a living thing. Just ahead, a glimmer of something caught my eye, a jagged rock formation jutting out from the wall. I could see faint outlines of symbols dug deep into the stone, similar to those on the altar. "Look! That might be important," I called out, my voice barely audible over the chaos. My boyfriend hesitated, fear clouding his expression. "We don't have time," he shouted back, but something in my gut urged me to stop. I released his hand and dashed toward the rock, curiosity pushing aside my fear. As I neared the formation, I noticed a faint blue light pulsing in response to my presence. The symbols began to glow brighter, almost as if they were singing to me. I reached out a trembling hand, brushing my fingers against the cold stone. In an instant, a jolt of energy surged through my arm, sending a wave of images crashing into my mind. I saw visions of battles fought in darkness, of creatures writhing beneath the earth, of a great power yearning to be unleashed. "What are you doing?" my boyfriend barked, panic coloring his voice. The shadow was gaining speed. I think it wants me to understand," I said breathlessly. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The ground shook violently, and I stumbled back. The rock glowed brighter, but the shadows around us shifted in tandem. There was no solace here, only more danger. We needed to keep moving. "Come on!" I yelled, pulling him along. We ran, the pulsing stone fading behind us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that more truths lay waiting for me there. If only I had stayed a moment longer. Ahead, the path split into two. One way was bathed in light, the other cloaked in shadow. "Which way?" I asked, my heart racing as I weighed our options. My boyfriend looked back at the shadow. It was closing in. "Light!" he yelled without hesitation, but I hesitated, memories flashing through my mind. What was waiting for us down that path? As we made our choice and sprinted toward the warm glow, I could have sworn I heard a voice, low and guttural. "You will awaken." Just then, a sharp pain pierced through my ankle. I stumbled and fell. I looked back and saw a tendril black and slimy snaking toward me. "Help!" I screamed, panic flooding my system as I reached for my boyfriend. He lunged toward me, but the darkness surged again, shifting like water. The ground beneath us broke apart, sending me tumbling into a bottomless abyss. As I screamed, I watched the light fade, swallowed by shadows that danced and whispered around me like mocking spirits. Then everything went dark. Chapter 7. I gasped as I landed hard on something solid. It felt like ground, but the darkness smothered me. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet. I had no idea where I was. "Are you okay?" a voice called out from the gloom. It was my boyfriend. Relief surged through me, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "What just happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know," he shouted back, panic lacing his tone. "Feels like we fell for miles." I focused on him through the shadows. He looked disoriented, his eyes wide and scanning the darkness. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my fear. We need to find a way out. We began moving cautiously, the ground rough under my feet. My senses heightened as I strained to hear any signs of the shadow's pursuit. The air felt dense, almost electric, as if something else stirred in the dark around us. As we walked, I noticed something in the distance, a faint glow. At first, hope sparked within me. But as we approached, my stomach turned. The source of the light came from a circle of stones, each one etched with the same symbols I had touched before. "This isn't good," my boyfriend muttered, backing away slowly. "Wait," I said, feeling drawn to the formation again. The symbols glowed softly, almost beckoning me. A feeling of familiarity washed over me, but deeper still was an urge to understand. "That's what got us into this mess," he protested, grabbing my arm to pull me back. "We don't have time." I shook my head. "What if it holds the answer? We can't just ignore it." But as I stepped closer, a noise shattered the silence. A low rumbling reverberated through the ground. The glowing symbols pulsed in response, and I felt a pull from the stones, as if they were alive. "What did you do?" my boyfriend shouted, staring at the stones with wide eyes. "I don't know," I shouted back, panic creeping into my voice. Then, shadows began swirling around us, less like tendrils and more like wisps, whispering unintelligibly. My heart raced. Suddenly, I caught glimpses of faces in the darkness. Twisted and tormented expressions, like echoes of the past. I gasped. They seemed to reach out, urging me closer to the stones. "Get away from there," he urged, pulling me back hard. But the voices seemed to grow louder, drowning out his words. "Join us," they hissed, a chorus of icy whispers wrapping around me. I had to resist. I could feel the cold fingers of fear tightening around my chest. "Stop!" I cried, trying to ground myself. Realization dawned, these weren't mere shadows, they were desperate souls, trapped in an endless cycle of longing that I needed to break free from this nightmarish embrace. But before I could even think of a plan, the ground trembled again, and the stones began to vibrate violently. I turned to my boyfriend. "We need to go now." But before we could take a single step, a blinding light erupted from the center of the stones. It engulfed everything, spinning and pulling at me like a cyclone. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for another fall, then everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, I was back at the altar, the same cold stone beneath me. My boyfriend lay unconscious beside me. The shadow loomed on the edge of the light, watching. "What have I awakened?" I whispered, heart pounding in my chest, and just then, I realized, the shadow wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Chapter 8. I blinked, trying to make sense of the scene before me. My boyfriend lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, and the shadow loomed nearby, a dark mass filled with intent. I felt a rush of fear surge through me, but I had to focus. "Jake, wake up!" I shouted, shaking him gently. There was no answer. Panic threatened to take over. I looked back at the shadow. It was still watching, and I could feel its energy pressing against me. I needed to act. I knelt beside him, checking for signs of life. His breathing was shallow but steady. Relief washed over me. But I didn't have time to dwell on that. The whispered voices from the dark were building again, swirling in the air like a storm. "Join us," they echoed, twisting my thoughts. I fought to push them away. Those voices were connected to the shadow, and it wanted something from me. Then I noticed something shimmering in the dim light by the altar, a small, metallic object half buried in the stone crevices. I reached for it, praying it would offer some sort of defense or clue. It felt cool and heavy in my palm. Holding it up, I saw that it was a small, ornate mirror. Why was it here? I glanced over at Jake once more. He remained unconscious, and the shadow's presence continued to loom. I had to make a decision. Maybe you can help, I whispered to the mirror. Nothing happened, but I felt a pulse of warmth resonate through my fingers. I pressed my back against the altar, glancing around for anything else that could help me. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the altar, a small door creaked open, leading into darkness. Should I risk going further into the unknown? The shadow shifted, almost as if sensing my indecision, and I knew I could not stay here. Okay, we're doing this, I muttered under my breath. I tucked the mirror into my pocket and glanced back at Jake one final time. I'll be right back. I stepped through the door. The space beyond felt cramped and eerie. The air was thick, and the shadows danced along the walls as I crept in. I strained to hear any sound above my pulse. Then, I heard a soft whispering, but this time, it didn't feel malevolent. It's in the mirror, the voice said gently. Find the truth. I shivered. What truth? My thoughts raced. Was it connected to whatever was happening to Jake? When I absorbed the shadow's whispers, a realization hit me hard. What if I had the power to confront this darkness? With the mirror as my guide, could I understand what it wanted? I pulled it out again, holding it close. The surface shimmered, and I saw not just my own reflection but glimpses of shadows intertwining with fading silhouettes. Who are you? I gasped at the mirror. But before I could get an answer, I felt a familiar presence behind me. I spun around to see the shadow not just lingering anymore but inching closer, its form becoming clearer, and there, emerging from the darkness, was a face I recognized. Shock seized my breath. I didn't just awaken the shadow. I had awakened something far worse. Chapter 9, the face grinned at me, a twisted semblance of someone I once trusted. It was my mother, a ghost from my past wrapped in shadow. Her eyes burned with a flame that seemed both familiar and terrifying. Mom? I whispered, disbelief coursing through me. But the warmth I felt from the mirror reminded me that this was not the mother I remembered. What do you want? Join us, her voice echoed with an eerie harmony. It didn't feel like love, it felt like a command. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The darkness behind her pulsed as if it were alive, waiting for my response. That I clutched the mirror tightly, my thumb brushing over the ornate edges. Something deep inside me told me that this object held a secret. The whispers from before echoed in my mind, urging me to look deeper. I couldn't let fear consume me, not now. What do you mean? I shouted, desperately trying to ground myself. You're not real. The shadow shifted, its tendrils reaching toward me, pulling the air around me tight. I could feel its breath sour and bitter. I am your truth, the shadow embered. You cannot escape. I blinked, fear and anger battling within me. You're lying. I felt the mirror begin to vibrate in my hand. I turned my attention back to it, willing it to show me something. Anything that would remind me of the reality I had lived. The surface rippled, and suddenly I was not just seeing reflections but seeing memories. My mother laughing at summer picnics, her soft voice reading bedtime stories, but each memory faded like smoke. And then it changed, the images wrenched violently to darker moments, arguments, pain, her eyes empty as she walked away. It overwhelmed me. I dared a glance back at her shadowy face, now twisted in a grimace. You abandoned me, I stammered. Now we can be together again, she responded, her voice a cocked weapon, ready to strike. Tears stung my eyes. The truth was relentless, but it was also liberating. No. I want to let you take me. I gathered my strength and faced the specter. If you are my truth, then I claim it. The mirror blazed with light as I shouted. Show me. The warmth flared into a radiant beam, flooding the cramped space. The dark embrace began to recoil, the whispers turned to screams. It was the release I didn't know I needed, but just as quickly, the brightness dimmed, dragging me back into the shadows. I fell, feeling an invisible grip tighten around my throat. The last thing I saw was my mother's expression shifting from rage to desperation, like she realized she was losing. Then everything went dark that I woke up gasping, the cold stone floor pressing against my cheek. The mirror lay shattered beside me, shards glinting in the dim light. The shadow was gone. Jake was still lying on the floor, but now he was moving. "Please, stay with me," I murmured, crawling toward him. What had I done? Had I lost my way in confronting the darkness? The answers felt just out of reach, and the echo of danger still lingered. But another feeling surged through me, determination. I needed to understand what had happened in that fleeting moment of truth. As I cradled Jake's head in my lap, I noticed something gleaming in the distance. The door was ajar again. A low hum vibrated from within, drawing me closer. What lay beyond? Was it another secret to uncover? Or had I only scratched the surface? I took a deep breath. It was time to find out. As I gathered the last of my courage, the door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. The soft light spilling through felt like a welcoming beacon, contrasting sharply with the oppressive darkness of the previous chamber. The air buzzed with energy, and it took everything in me not to turn back and bolt. But I had come too far to retreat now. Jake stirred beside me. Where are we?" he mumbled, blinking as he regained consciousness. Relief washed over me, but I knew we couldn't linger. "I'm not sure, but we need to move. The shadow, it's gone for now, but we can't let our guard down." Together, we crept through the doorway, stepping into a large, circular room adorned with more of those haunting symbols carved into the walls. Faint glimmers radiated from the stone, creating an ethereal glow that almost felt alive. I could sense the whispers too, still echoing, but more distant, as if the space itself wanted to protect us. "What is this place?" Jake asked, his voice a mixture of awe and concern. "I think it's part of the same ritual, the one those notes talked about," I whispered, recalling the fragments I had discovered. "It feels like a place of power." Suddenly, the whispers sharpened, swirling around us with urgency. I think I saw shadows flit along the walls, but they disappeared as quickly as they came. My heart raced. They must be connected to whatever awakened when we stepped into that darkness. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a crystal orb pulsating with light, a stark contrast to the suffocating shadows we had just escaped. "We have to find a way to contain it," I said softly, feeling drawn to it. It thrummed with energy, beckoning me closer, but also filling me with uncertainty. "What if it's a trap?" Jake cautioned, taking a step back. "We should leave before it's too late." "I can't run again, Jake." "Not this time," I replied, fear spurring my defiance. "We need to figure out how to end this once and for all." As we approached the pedestal, I noticed a small inscription etched into the stone beneath the orb: "Only the truth can shatter the veil." My heart sank. What did it mean? I felt a surge of emotion, anguish for my mother, the pain of confrontation, the fight for freedom. "I don't know how to face this." My voice trembled, and I questioned whether what I had done had truly awakened the darkness or laid the path for a reckoning. The orb flared brighter, illuminating the room. Jake's eyes widened. "What if it's calling for you? You felt its power. You were brave enough before." With a deep breath, I stepped closer, focusing on my deepest fears and uncertainties. "If you're watching, whatever you are, I am not afraid to face you. You'll not drag me into the darkness." In that moment, the orb resonated with a chorus of voices, and the air crackled with electricity. I closed my eyes, allowing images to wash over me, past and present mingling together. I could see the faces of those I lost, the choices I had made, the battles I fought against the darkness, not just outside but within myself. Then I understood, the truth was not only my past but the courage to acknowledge it. With a surge of strength, I reached out to the orb, feeling the warmth of its light envelop me. "I am both tangled in shadows and bathed in light," I declared, "and I choose to embrace both." As I touched the orb, a shockwave erupted, reverberating through the room. The shadows flickered violently, pulled toward the orb's light, but they didn't vanish. Instead, they danced like fireflies caught in a cyclone, weaving between realms until I could barely keep my footing. In that final eruption, I glimpsed fleeting faces, trapped souls that had craved connection. Hope intertwined with despair. Energy coiled around me until I felt weightless, adrift in a tapestry of clarity and chaos. I released a breath as the orb began to crack. Light flooded the room, radiating outward like a sun breaking through clouds. Suddenly, the urgency paused, time suspended, as if the world held its breath. Then silence fell. The room was empty, the orb shattered into vibrant shards sparkling against the stone floor. I turned to find Jake standing beside me, his expression wide with disbelief. Did we do it? I stepped outside into the soft glow of the evening sun filtering through the trees. The air felt different now, charged with possibility. I half expected the shadows to return, the whispers to sustain their haunting song, but the world around us felt alive, unbound. Yet, a lingering sensation settled heavy in my gut. A question remained: had we truly vanquished the darkness, or merely postponed its return? I looked back once more at the cabin behind us, its presence still looming, cryptic. As we departed down the winding path leading away, the last vestiges of whispers drifted through my mind, seamlessly blending with the rustling leaves. I realized some truths might forever remain elusive, floating just beyond comprehension, but decided then and there that I would remain vigilant, for the shadows had not just been awakened. They had become a part of my story. And maybe, within that coexistence, lay the real power of understanding. I moved to a different city after that, trying to start fresh. But sometimes, in the stillness of night, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear those whispers. It reminds me of the darkness that lingers in the corners of existence, waiting for an opportunity, and I wonder, will they ever truly fade away?